What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we've got an exciting new budget option. Now as you see, I have three different flares on the table. Well, different and same, different but same. Anyway, they are the Flair Neos. This was kind of the first generation. This was the first attempt at the Flair Neo Flex, and this is their relaunch of the Flair Neo Flex. When the first one came out, the original Flair Neo, it was an incredible budget option. It was at $119 US, and it was built pretty well. It had this nice kind of aluminum casting. It was solidly built, easy to take apart, put back together. Very simple. You just had essentially a few different parts that made it all together. And they have this little rolly piece of steel right here that pushes down that piston, and you could upgrade to a pressure gauge. This is about a $50 upgrade, but take that apart, and that's what you had for about $119 US, at about 50 bucks, and bada bing, you've got your pressure gauge. As time went on, I'm sure they were considering they'd have to raise the price, but then that would take away their most budget option, close to 100 bucks. So they came out with the Flair Neo Flex, which, because the whole body is made out of plastic, they were able to cut the price down to $99 US, which is really impressive. And I did a video on this already where I kind of showcased it. But essentially what you have in these machines is the body is just that, it's the body. It doesn't come in contact with the espresso, it is just essentially the mechanism with which you can create the force capable of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bar of pressure in order to make your espresso. So if we take that for what it is, that it's a casing, whoops, there we go. This comes apart pretty easily too, you just kind of give it a little yank. But that's what they're kind of doing. The main part of the machine is this little bit here, the Brew Chamber. And this is made of high quality stainless steel with a silicone band around it. Down here, the portafilter is a plastic on the outside, but on the inside it is lined. It is a basket that is made of metal. So what the coffee's actually touching, especially if you use the bottomless, is all metal. And on the inside here, it's all metal. The piston itself is a plastic, which you can take a look at right here. So you have plastic on the top part, and on the bottom, you have a bit of plastic here that touches that hot water. But for the most part, it is, that's the only piece of plastic that kind of touches it. And in all reality, you could argue that this doesn't even really touch the water itself, because there's gonna be a little air pocket when you put this in, unless you fill it up all the way to the brim, in which case it will be touching that water. But outside of that, that's pretty much the only non-metal part that's touching that water, or the espresso, the resulting espresso. I had to do some sort of balance. They got rid of that wonderful, what I think felt really premium structure. I was a little bummed when they moved over to the plastic one, though I understand it from a budget perspective. Now, my critique on it was that it didn't come with a pressure gauge. Neither does this one, and it makes sense. Pressure gauges aren't the cheapest thing in the world, and so I actually fitted this pressure gauge onto it, though they reached out and other people told me this wasn't compatible, and it's because this side is too flush with the side of the lever arm. Now, I didn't have any issues if I twisted it off to the side like this, and I've been pulling great shots using a pressure gauge on this, no worries. But they technically did not recommend you doing that. I get really excited about budget options because I want everyone to be able to experience high quality coffee in the comfort of their own home and to jump into this rabbit hole with all of us crazy kooks. What they did with this new one is they, boom, have rebuilt that whole system altogether, the whole brew chamber, in order to make it a bit more narrow and to fit a new pressure gauge in here. Now the pressure gauge, pretty underwhelming. It's similar to the Cafelat robot, which actually costs about 4 times more. And to give you an idea, there's that little baby robot pressure gauge. But then again, the robot one does show every 2 bar of pressure. This one just gives you a range of espresso and stop. Not a big fan of that. How difficult is it to toss numbers on there? It might be confusing to beginners, but it's something they can grow into. I'm just not a big fan of an area. It's not even ticked off, I didn't get my allowance today, so now I'm really ticked off. Name that movie in the comments below. If I do what you say, I might turn into a robot. Do my chores day after day, and they don't want any lip. Now, so step off. All right, I'm sorry. That happens sometimes where I'm overtaken. This new one, they say, is compatible with the other gauge. At least it shows it as an add-on. It says Neo compatible. So maybe they're talking about the original Neo, but they don't sell it anymore, maybe refurbished. But anyway, I would test it, but honestly, it worked on this one for me, so it's gonna work on this for me as well. I am happy they have it. It is way better than nothing. It's a massive step up, and the fact that it's included is fantastic. So kudos to Flair for not increasing the price point of the machine and fitting this in there. That's great. But because we're on a video and I want to actually see what's going on, I'm going to just screw this one in, because it's bigger and a little bit better, and I'm just gonna use this. So we're gonna get this nice and tight in there. Probably use some plumber's tape, but we're just gonna go for this. There's no difference between these in the sense that the quality of espresso coming out will be identical. And the reason is because the brewing chamber is essentially the same between all three. They've not changed the basket at all, so it's just this little bad boy. Now mine currently has the little flow restrictor, or it's not a flow restrictor, it's just so it doesn't make a mess. But you have the bottom of the basket right there. You don't have to use this. Like me, I just throw them all around. I don't even know where they are anymore, but you can just pull it straight out. Now, they have issues where it kind of like comes out the side, rolls down the side, it's a little messy. I prefer just to go straight naked, bottomless, baby. Now, of course, with these, they come with that flow restrictor portafilter, which is like this. Now on the bottom, you can open it more, you can lock it. Now this is actually a fun thing to play with if you want to, because you can completely close it off and stop the drippies from happening at all. During the shot, you can like bloom it and not waste anything, and you can open it up. But anyway, I don't really use this much, especially not with this, because this little guy is the faux crema maker, is what I call it. It's the foaminator. It hyper pressurizes the liquid going through it, and it makes like a faux crema. It makes like little bubbles, which isn't the same as actual crema that's created during the brew process. This is like artificially creating bubbles in your espresso. All you need to worry about with these machines is the basket itself, which is, coated in plastic, but the inside's metal. You have the shower screen, which is where the water goes through the coffee and out, making the espresso. Then you have the brew chamber itself, which the brew chamber on its own is literally just a piece of metal. So if we take this out, hi ho, silver, away! That's all it is. This is a lot lighter. The new one, it's thinner. And just to kind of show that, let's get the weights of them. Now, of course, the little silicone band around it, I'm just gonna assume that's a wash. Granted, this one even looks a little thinner as well, but I'm telling you that's not what's contributing to the majority of the weight. This one weighs 270 grams. This one's 150, okay? A lot thinner, all right? So they're actually probably saving some money by doing less stainless steel here, which they're actually putting into the pressure gauge. But I'm really happy with that change. A pressure gauge is more important, and in addition to that, there's less preheating required with this thinner chamber. A lot of people are really impressed with something like the Cafelat robot because it doesn't require much preheating, especially if using anything other than lightly roasted coffees. And that's because when there's not much mass, there's not much to heat up. You're just focusing on the heat going into the coffee grounds. So that's the move they're making with this thinner chamber, which I think is fantastic. I think all you really need to do is find something you can set in your kettle and let this sit on top of your kettle as it's heating up. Once that's fully preheated, actually I'd go upside down just so it fills in the inside. The basket doesn't matter nearly as much. Once that's all heated up on the inside, you're good to go. We'll prove it right now. But first, I'm gonna kind of clean this stuff up because this was just for the visual comparison. I'm still really sad that this metal structure is gone. RIP, I love you. Someone on my Patreon is about to win this in a competition though. If you're interested in all the things I put up as competitions there, go check out Patreon. This week is the Flair Neo Pro 2 and a 58. Those are gonna go bye-bye. Check out the Patreon, hit the like and subscribe, leave a comment. Thank you so much, but let's continue on. All right, so I've had this brew chamber over here heating up on the kettle itself, just so you have an idea of what that looks like. I took the little funnel from a Stag, put it right there, the Stag X brewer. So it's just been sitting there getting nice and hot from the steam on a boiling water temperature. Now this is not going to be good enough to do just one pass for a light roast coffee, but it's absolutely fine for medium to dark. You do need to have some of this preheated though. That thermal mass needs to be heated. If it's not, you'll have like 84 degree water even if you pour in boiling water if it's a cold metal chamber. So first things first, we take the basket off, we let that chamber continue to heat up. We're gonna take this here, get our little funnel. There we go. There's our coffee. So with it, I just give some taps like so, take the funnel off. Then we have this is not only our piston remover, but it's our tamper. Really cheap feeling, obviously. I wish there was a nicer one, but better than nothing. To keep the prices low, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Then we got our shower screen right here. Now we're ready to put it in the brew chamber. So we take the brew chamber, now it's very hot. We put this back in, boom. Now we're going to take the water and we're going to put the thermocouple in here to see what it immediately registers at. We're at 89.6. It's probably even lower now, 88.8. It's just going to keep dropping, but it peaked at 89.6. We want to go ahead. This is all quick if you want it to be at a higher temperature. We toss this in, put it there. Take our scale. You don't have to use a scale, obviously. We put our cup right underneath. Now the max volume on this is 40 to 43 grams. So we'll keep that in mind. Keep that in mind for those at home. Then we're going to start our pull. So I'm going to start with like a little bit of pre-infusion, about 2 bar, letting some drops come out. We're at about 2 grams. At about 3, I'll ramp up. All right, let's ramp up to about 8 bar. I'm going to let it sit here until we have, and also notice the creaky noise. All right, I'm going to slowly ramp down. We're going down to 5 bar. Going on to about 4. I really like decreasing pressure profiles. I'm going to go down till we have about 30 grams. We're going to hit 3 bar here in a second, and there we go, we're at 30. All you have to do, especially the darker the roast you drink, is you take your basket, take your funnel, dump the coffee in. Only reason you use the funnel is so it doesn't go out everywhere. Give it some tap so it settles down in there. Then you're gonna take whatever you wanna call it. It's also your tent. You just push down, okay? Push down with some decent force so that the ground stop moving. Then you take your shower screen. This helps to distribute the water over the bed as evenly as possible. Then what we're gonna do is take the chamber. You don't have to heat it up if you're using a darker coffee and if you wanna make this more simple. You make sure that you push it down where the O-rings are so it has a really nice seal around the edges. Then you just fill this with water. I wouldn't go too high so it doesn't spill. You put your piston in, which looks like a little tamper as well. Put your piston in, you place it here, and you just push. Obviously we need to take a sip as it's cooled. I'm such a big fan of smaller size portafilters. I think when you get those deeper pucks, it does a great job. Now with 12 grams, I'm probably not getting that deep of a puck in comparison to like a normal 58 millimeter portafilter, probably a similar depth, but maybe a deeper with the aspect ratio, whole part of it. But I really like these deeper pucks. They give a lot wider margin of error, so you get better shots more consistently. You hit the optimal shot a lot more quickly and a lot more readily whenever you have these deeper pucks, and they just make really nice espresso. Now, obviously, the big issues here, this thing wobbles. Weebles, wobbles, they don't fall down. I don't like that, and the squeak was just a lot to handle as I was pushing down. And honestly, some of that may be because I was pushing from the back. But you know, it's still there and it's not ideal. I really like the metal one. It was not nearly as faffy as this. But again, gotta make products make sense, gotta make the company money, and I'm just glad they added the pressure gauge and listened to that, and they made a thinner brew chamber, which is absolutely, it may sound like, oh, it's less hefty, now it's not as good quality. That's just not true. This is much better because you don't have to preheat as much. I'd say go even thinner, and that would be great. Put more of a sleeve around it for more thermal stability. Like, that's fantastic. This is not something that you need to upgrade from, in the sense that you're not gonna get better tasting espresso from bigger portafilters. That's something I hope I started to debunk, and I hope other people can understand that you don't need 58 to get the best of your coffee. You can get similar quality shot with all these different size portafilters. And having a manual lever at home, it's just joy to use. And being priced at $99 US, it's pretty rad. And of course you can add on the case for an extra 20, which now it's 119, but the case is quite nice if you're someone that would want to carry a little briefcase Flair around. I don't know if I'd be carrying it around, but I know a lot of people really value the portability of like the Flair Pro 2, and so that makes this one a lot more portable. Now, whenever I make these cheap espresso videos, people always ask about grinders, so I'm gonna recommend the same ones I always recommend because I still think they stand the test of time. But you have things like the Q2 Heptagonal, or if you like darker roasted coffees, the Q2 Pentagonal. Both are by EasyPresso or 1Zpresso. Those are great. I much prefer the Q2 Heptagonal, and I actually use it very often. I used it in a video recently, and it's this little cutie right here. It has just this simple little handle, very small, fits in an AeroPress. Absolutely love this. Now you can also, if you want to spend a lot more money on a hand grinder, the JMax from EasyPresso is fantastic. The Kinu hand grinder is one of the best built hand grinders on the market, and their typical burr is wonderful for espresso. Their pour over burr, very nice for pour overs. Orphan espresso grinders are all fantastically built. Some of those smaller king grinders or the cheaper king grinders are actually fantastic for espresso. The K2, the K4, K6 is my favorite of their series, but they all do, they all do a solid job. The Timemore C2 does a nice job. So with with these hand grinders, you can get down to less than $100 and get fantastic quality coffee. And of course, you could also try something like the Pietro that I helped with the Pro Brew Burrs, but the multi-purpose burrs I had nothing to do with are actually really nice for espresso as well. It's just kind of a bear to grind with it. Anyway, then for electric, of course, the Baratza Encore ESP I think does a good job. I've seen some good things about the DF54, which is a pretty cheap electric grinder, so those are ones to keep in mind. But other than that, I think we've covered just about everything. I'm really excited about the push for more budget things without sacrificing quality. Initially, they've never offered a pressure gauge with the Neo. I'm glad they now offer one. I do miss the metal structure, but I think the pressure gauge and the thinner wall construction on the Brew Chamber are fantastic additions. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to check out my Patreon below if you want to enter these competitions or partake in my Discord or do all that fun stuff. That's about it for me today. I hope that you brew something tasty today. And cheers.